Y'all know what's funny? I just finished lambasting PlayStation 5 and the Nintendo Switch, talking about one of the craziest things is these consoles, the manufacturers don't necessarily do a lot of metrics. Or the way they unveil it, they don't really talk too much about performance before they bring it out. They'll talk about new features, all of this stuff, and I'm on record saying on the PC side, they'll give the hardware to third-party reviewers, YouTubers who would do their metrics, they'll do their tests and their analysis, and you have a good idea, solid idea of what kind of GPU or CPU, or in some cases, some reviewers do RAM, like Hardware Unboxed, and so on and so forth. They even do monitors and stuff, and you'll be able to see exactly what it is you're trying to buy. But it appears that Nvidia is not interested with the 5060 in doing this. Hence, I take it back. I stand corrected. Nvidia has basically sunk into this low point where now these people are now making videos. Don't buy the RTX 5060. This is from Hardware Unboxed. Daniel Owen made a video as well where he says that this is also happening, where Nvidia is going out here and putting their giving the drivers to make this particular GPU work to select outlets. It's interesting to see. Now, here's the thing. It appears that the media is for sale, apparently, right? And this is probably right now what the whole reality is, because if this particular GPU made its way out, it seemed like reviewers were ready to torture it because it's an 8 gig GPU. So here, those of you who play on console, this is a very good lesson to learn. And that lesson is you don't buy anything until people have already gone ahead to take a hit for the team. So a lot of people jump in and, talk about the PS5 Pro and order one and run to, freaking GameStop and all that, buy it, got home and started to look and say, where's the difference? Simply because the differential between both consoles are very minimal at the end of the day. Some people are like, well, I got it. To me, it's this and to me, it's that. Well, again, if they made the decision having known that this is the performance difference, then great. But some people ran out there and bought it from just the hype that was being put out there. Hence, it's not, something that you just take lightly. And this is why we enjoy the PC ecosystem. These cats, they are doing these, analyses and reviews and tests based on one thing, their reputation. Now, I got to be honest, there's a kind of a gray area here because they give them these, products ahead of time, which is weird because Nvidia gave them the 5060. I think Daniel Owen has access to the 5060, and I think Hardware Unboxed may have access to it. I don't know. I said I think, maybe. But what they're saying is, if you try to even test the thing, it doesn't even work because it needs a driver, which also goes against something that I've usually said in the past, that is, these GPUs that we buy and CPUs, most, hardware that you're buying from these companies, they don't have any such thing as a DRM. They work whether or not, they work whether or not you want to use them on whatever platform or whatever operating system or whatnot, if you can get them to work in a supported manner. And so they can't necessarily break them. But I don't know what Nvidia is doing here, where they can give you a hardware piece and a piece will just not work without a specific driver. Perhaps I think what may be occurring is there's probably some interaction going on with the device, and even reviewers can't even test it without, perhaps something that allows for it to maybe work on a computer and it's not gone on Windows updates and so on and so forth. However, this company has finally, gone the route of Intel, and I think this is it for us, Nvidia. I have a bad taste in my mouth having even bought my 4090 and 4080. You can keep the 50 and the 60 and the 70 series. Don't worry. GPUs are going to be made with or without you. That's the beauty of the market. And again, as much as Intel did this, took this approach, and I'm not saying Intel did anything like this, but Intel went to the point where they were not necessarily providing value, in my opinion. I can tell you because, man, I remember almost, I used to buy a lot of used components to build my PCs. Whenever I'd want to upgrade, like something little like RAM, I'll look online, and if I see like maybe say somebody on my local, buy sell trade or whatever had RAM for cheaper, I'll just buy it from them, because to me, easier buying RAM for like $20 than having to order from somewhere else. I mean, Sure, sometimes I'll buy a dud. It is what it is. But, again, it's a 20 compared to, like, at the time, DDR4 was a little pricey, a little bit more, right? And so one really crazy thing that, you got to see with Intel was they just made these CPUs that weren't necessarily impressive for a lot of their users. And at the time, it seemed like, man, you were almost begging Intel to, do something better while AMD was still figuring it out. The moment AMD figured it out, it was over. AMD right now doesn't want to play. They're comfortable. Nvidia is kind of like in a weird place. So they feel like they can kind of take their time on this market and leverage as much money as possible. But Intel is the player that is the wild card. That is a player with an ace up their sleeves. And they're going through financial challenges, which I think is usually the best way for these companies to come out with excellence. I mean, for those of you who play on consoles, we talk about Xbox all the time and all of that stuff. Intel is the underdog in the GPU market. So what do we need? We need them to come in and disrupt gaming, put AMD in a really interesting place. And I don't know, gamers are also strange. They'll buy what they want to buy. But at the end of the day, we just need that competition. Some of us were about it. If we see a company starting to act out, and Nvidia has been acting out for a minute now, this is not the first time. They've been on it since, in my opinion anyways, around the 20-ish and the 30 series. That's when I think they lost their colossal minds. Because I remember that the reason I skipped the 30 series was because I just couldn't understand what the heck they were selling to everybody. That was the weird thing for me that made me go, what's going on here? Because I ordered a 3070, I returned it. I ordered a 3080, I returned it. I just didn't feel these GPUs were actually pumping out frames as the price was asking for. At this point, I bought myself a 6800 XT, and I was like, yeah, let me complement my, workload, because I have, backup PCs that I use in case, something goes on, because I make videos and stuff, right? So I get a 3070. I don't like it. Performance is kind of whack. After looking at some other things, I didn't even get it out the box. The 3080, I drove all the way to Best Buy, found myself one. This thing was so hot. The fan is so whiny and everything. I'm not going to mention the brand, because what's weird is I have an AMD version of that brand, and that card didn't give me any problems. I ordered a 3090. Coil whine, Asus ROG 3090. It was actually on sale, good discount, and this thing had coil whine, and I was like, I'm not buying a product for this much that has coil whine. I got an EVGA one, was not still impressed with the performance, and that's how the 30 series was a bust for me at the end of the day. And then 40 series had enough of what I thought was a good delta, but the price was trash. And once they basically moved from that, they saw scalpers making all that money, they could not go back again. The genie couldn't be put in the bottle. But I think they need a humbling, because this particular incident is them trying to dodge what the market is asking for, which is no more 8 gig, cards, because they want to force redundancy. If they give you a 10, 12 gig GPU, you're going to use it for multiple generations. And now that the Nintendo Switch has come out, this is a whole different conversation that we got to go ahead and, make. So the controversy is actually so deep. Hardware Unboxed is talking about the outlets who are actually putting stuff out there, comparing frame generation to regular, to other cards that don't have frame generation. Thereby, the results are looking really skewed and weird. I think that these folk that are actually reviewing stuff need to box up that 5060 and send it back to Nvidia and say, we're not going to review it. You gave us a product, and you're supposed to basically say, oh, okay, review it, put the data out there so we have an objective measure, but you withheld the driver from us. Take your card back. If we want to review, we'll buy it ourselves and review it. They need to leverage the influence that they have and not worry much about the so-called competition that's going on YouTube. That's the thing. I think they really have a way to be able to bring these companies, and they have a wonderful opportunity to bring these companies' ears to the ground. Now, you don't want to start a fight with Nvidia. They could blacklist you, but that'd be fine too, right? If they blacklist you, it really does speak to your integrity. We don't trust these companies anyways. Not a single PC, gamer that I know trusts any of these companies. Maybe one, I don't know. I doubt it though. We're all about, hey, who's going to give us value for money, and who's going to give us the right product that we want to use for the money that we want to spend. And so if they're not about it and they don't want to serve gamers, they can take their AI loving selves to go deal with something else. No one's begging them. And Intel, are you seeing this? This is your opportunity, man. You need to get into this market. You need to stop slouching. Yes, you got pummeled with the CPU side, but the GPU side presents you a wonderful opportunity to get in here and let's have some conversations. If you make something good, we're going to buy. If you cook, we're going to, we're down with you. But again, you can't be sleeping and then letting and then crying, oh, woe is you, Nvidia. Oh, woe is you, AMD. Get in here. It's almost a duopoly at this point with GPUs, and we don't need that. We need a third disruptor, and that will probably balance things out very well in a sense. Because again, the developers need to stop all of this, being in cohorts with these hardware companies where it's like, oh, we put ray tracing in our game. Oh, we put these global illumination, blah, blah, blah. If you don't have it, this GPU, you can't play this game. And then eventually when nobody buys the game, they find out, oh, wait, hold on. Like Alan Wake 2. Oh, we removed the requirement of mesh shaders. So you could play with GTX GPUs. Thank God the GTX came out the box, but the GTX days was when Nvidia was hungry. They didn't have the whole AI thing that they basically used to farm money from big corpos, right? So now that they basically have AI money that they're farming, guess what? We're not relevant to them anymore, right? So if we're not going to be relevant to them, then they shouldn't be relevant to us. But I'm not going to, presume to tell somebody what to do with their money. I just know for now, Nvidia and I were on a hiatus, okay? So Nvidia, you keep your GPUs, and whoever is giving me a good value would probably see me patronize them. How about that? Thanks for watching. Peace out.